So hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Ames's Corner. How are you all doing out there? So it's Labor Day 2017, and I think it'd be a great time to do a Labor Day project update tour. Now, I literally just got done with putting that roof panel we cut out of that Jeep into the 96 here. So I think what better place to start than with the 96. And yeah, as I said, there's that piece all welded in. This is all seam sealer and just some rusty metal primer I had lying around. I'll eventually paint this all body color. I just didn't have time to finish that today. Yeah, the outside is pretty much as it is. The interior is in really good shape as it has been. And we're looking at this because I had to grab the filming camera. I figured we'd give you a look. Boy, I love that headliner for a car that sat in the bushes, sat in one place in a yard with a tarp over it for almost 40 years. It sure does fare good inside. So anyways, underneath is where it counts on this one. What do you guys think of that, huh? I made this roll pan to meet it up because I wanted to use the pleats, the way the pleats are, these ribs feathered in at the end, so you couldn't really tell. And I think I did a damn good job, if I may say so myself. We can see down the side I used another piece of that roof, a little extra piece right here to come up the side, and I was able to match the corrugated pieces to it, so it looks pretty good. I mean, you can tell it's been patched, but it's definitely in there for good now. Oh, sorry guys. You can see same thing over here. I ground it out nice and even. And then I didn't get to put the tank in. Probably the problem with putting the tank in right now is I don't have a fuel sending unit to go with it. And I got to clean that tank out a little bit. I did a live show on the Facebook group where I was actually finishing this up. And we took a good look at the tank. But that's good enough for now. This thing's probably just going to sit here until spring. I'll move it around now and again, take it on a little drive in the snow. But everything on it's working great. Starts right up. It runs, goes down the highway. About 75, 80 miles an hour, no problem. Brakes good, shifts well, clutch works great, no complaints. We got the old tires from the Sonnet. These are what was on the Sonnet when I restored it, or Russ stored it, so we got to get some other tires on it eventually, but there's no point doing that now. The problem with this car and why I really can't do anything with it is two things. One is I don't have a title for it. In Massachusetts, you got to have a title on pretty much every vehicle. There's no statute of limitations on titles in this state, so every car needs to have one. I actually bought this off the last registered and titled owner, but it was a time when Massachusetts didn't require title, so he doesn't have an actual copy of it. He went to the DMV to try to get the title for it, and they don't have any record of it, so the last registered owner tells me you can't get the title, but I got a way around that. We got a way around that. I just have to give it to like a family member who lives in a state that doesn't require titles. Luckily, Donnie, the one we all gave Project Charity to, he lives in Maine. Maybe he'll help me out. If not, I'm sure I could find someone else that'll give me a little hand. It's not like I'm asking to do something crazy illegal or anything. Next up to take a look at is the Sonnet. Now, you guys saw this on the last video. We took this to the Winnekinne Castle. I wasn't going to bring it this year. It was in pretty sad shape a few weeks ago before I decided to give it a day and get it ready for the car show. So what had happened to this car recently is the left side exhaust, and we can even see it, broke off right with that little repair. This is a repair I had to do in a hurry. It broke off right at that repair, and it tore the hanger out from under the car, and that pipe fell down just as I was getting on the highway and slid over into the other wheel and hit the other wheel and took the tire out, cut a hole right in the sidewall of my new tires. Luckily, when I bought these tires, I bought them with road hazards, so I got this one replaced for free. So no foul on that end. However, when I was getting off the highway in this car, when I was, the exhaust broke off getting on the highway. Obviously, it's on the ground making a ton of noise, banging around. I had to pull over. We have Interstate 495 has something called drunk bumps. They're they cut in like the median strip or in either edge of the highway. So when you roll over it, say you've fallen asleep and you hit it, it shakes your car and makes a violent noise. And it works great for that purpose. The trouble is when that pipe was hanging down, it hit those serrations in the highway and pushed this left exhaust that broke off, pushed it right into the body here and actually cracked the body. And I just did a quick you know, just kind of pushed it together, a drift stitch zip tie, and just put some pumpkin orange paint that I use for touch-up on it. But that's yeah, that's something that happened. That's a thing that, what the hell are you doing? Get out of here. That's a thing that happened a few months in the spring, and I really didn't drive it. I didn't know what I was going to do with this car. I was kind of going around and toying with the idea of letting the Sonic go and selling it off. But you know what? I enjoy it so much. I didn't drive it all summer. I forgot how much I liked that visceral driving experience. The shakes, the rattles, the smells you get in this car, or a car like this. It just brought me back to my youth when I used to pull cars out of the woods and run them around. And you know, maybe I'd sell this to the right person, but I think the only right person for this car is me right now. So I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to part with this on it. I'm toying with it just because I have a lot of stuff to play with, a lot of cars, and in the state I live in, it's hard to have multiple of any vehicle, let alone old cars. But otherwise, starts up, runs great. Go to any car show anywhere, go down the highway, nice. And yeah, the Sonnet is what it is. I think we're going to do some more metal work on this now that this car is 90% of the metal work being done and welding done. I think we're going to do a few patches to this. I know we got a punky area. Yeah, I got a hole right here. I don't know if you guys can see it, but these rockers need to be gone over and rebuilt. Not a small job, but something I can definitely handle. So I guess next that brings us to the Super Scoot here. Not too bad. This is something I haven't showed you guys in quite some time. And I don't even remember the last time we played with this on camera was. I think it was when we did the motor swap. I rode it around a little bit, and then I just haven't showed it to you guys. I've just kind of enjoyed it as kind of basic transportation when I want to run to the store or something. Or what this bike really excels at is being able to shove it in the back of the station wagon and ferry vehicles, using this to leave this and then drive one, put this in it, and get both back at once. Now, for those of you that don't know, this is a 150cc motorcycle scooter, those GY6 motorcycle scooter engines and front suspension off of one of those scooters. The frame is actually to a 1985 Jawa 210 Sport, and Jawa is a moped made in Czechoslovakia, right there, that is known to not be fast. Jawas are known as in the moped world to be a really slow but reliable moped, and the oxymoron to this one is this thing is a ripper. It'll probably top out about 65 miles an hour and get there in about 8 seconds, which, you know, for a super bike is not bad, but for a moped it's scorching. We got the Flowmaster exhaust I put on it. We did that years ago on a show, on an episode way back at the old shop. What I did this year to it, and I didn't really show anybody, was I kind of tightened the front end up. I figured it needed a front fender, and the parts bike that gave us this motor had this front end on it, so I changed the whole fork because it has the mounts for this fender. This is actually Plastidip. It also has upgraded brakes, twin piston calipers. The old front end only had a single piston. And something I always intended for this bike, and I always envisioned it right from the beginning, was having a skateboard package shelf for the thing. And this is where I can put like a cooler bag for a picnic lunch, or you can put a toolbox on there. I can put anything I want and hold it on with a bungee cord. And that's something I always intended to put in the big open space between the headlight and the lower clamp for the front suspension. Yeah, the tank on this thing is from a Puch Magnum moped. The headlights from a Moto Becane moped, Tom, because as I've said it before, you gotta, can't take highways on a bike like this. Sometimes you gotta get somewhere and take back roads. We're usually taking a highway. And I got a Tom wired in, although this one has been on here for about 7 years and is no longer functional. I just leave it there kind of as a joke. Moto Becane seat, and just a fun little conversation piece. Next up, we got the trail trucks. There's not really much to say about these, just some Vatera Ascender trucks you guys have seen a lot lately. These had me really pushing the limits of the trails I grew up on to find new areas, and I found a lot of stuff I never knew existed. In some place I grew up, I thought I knew like the back of my hand, but because I was looking for places to challenge these little trail trucks going hiking in the woods, we found a lot of neat stuff. I've got some more episodes planned for these trail trucks. We got an abandoned airport here in Haverhill I want to go find with these, and then there is an abandoned highway near where I grew up in Newburyport, Massachusetts. There's an abandoned stretch of Interstate 95 that we're going to go explore with these trucks really soon. Maybe in the next week or two we'll get those two locations done with the trail trucks, but those things are a blast. Actually took those to the car show, the Winnikinny car show, and I gotta say they were an absolute hit. They were more of a hit than the Sonnet. Having these little trail trucks out there, we had two of them so you could kind of play around with each other. Whenever a young kid who, you know, I could see the stars in his eyes looking at all the cool cars, saw these trucks and be like, oh, that's something I could handle or something I'd love to try, I'd see him looking at it and I'd be like, here's the remote, drive it around, and I'd let just anybody use it. Any little kid that showed interest got to use these trail trucks. But I think honestly the biggest kid that was playing with these that day was Musty One. Darren from Musty One channel was on these things more than anybody. The next thing a lot of you guys have been asking about what's going on with it is the Goldwing. Now this really isn't a project. There's really no work needing to be done on this thing, just other than a couple little tune-up stuff I did. I've done very little to it. And this thing is an unbelievable example of a 1978 Goldwing. You guys saw this the first time I saw it. I did the little palm camera. We took a look at this bike, and I thought this was going to be a big gamble, and it wasn't. No gamble. This was all payout right here. What I've done to this bike is I've done just a few basic things. Probably number one, and a few of you might notice, is the motocross style handlebars. This had these really weird handlebars. I think they might even have been stock, but they were like way up here in a funny position. This bike had all sorts of the fairing on it, and the last owner took all that fairing off, and the handlebars had this riser built into them. It was like a 2-inch rise here, and the stock handlebars would have been put on to clear the fairing with that riser. Unfortunately, that puts you, 2 inches back on the seat with the stock handlebar configuration. So I went to the local motocross store, the local bike store, and I bought this set of Pro Taper 7/8 series handlebars for, of all things, a Yamaha Raptor. That would have been the fitment for those bars, but they are a perfect height and perfect riding position for me on this bike. Other things this bike has needed: the thermostat was stuck closed. I took a long run on the highway on this thing, probably 150 miles both ways at, fat left lane, 85, 90 miles an hour, maybe a little more. And she started heating up on me. The temp gauge was coming up, right to the upper limit of the white band. And I could reach down doing like 75. I'd slow down so the temp would come down. I could actually reach around while I was riding and touch the radiator here. The radiator was, ice cold, but the motor was boiling hot, so that told me the thermostat was sticking. I pulled it out, and when I put it back in, another thing that was happening, the coolant fans weren't coming on when it was heating up. I thought it was a fan switch at first, but when it was heating up on the highway and I could feel the radiator cold, I knew the thermostat wasn't open. So I pulled the thermostat out just to see what it was like, what was going on. Put no thermostat in it, and now it overcools. It takes a while to heat up. It never overheats, and when I'm idling a long time, the fan now comes on. I actually was able to cross the thermostat, and I have it sitting up in my apartment, but I just haven't had the time to throw it in there with work and getting the 96 home, which I'm really glad it's home. I put a whopping 909 miles. I rolled the odometer, the trip meter over when I first got the bike, just so I keep track of that first 1,000, and we are just about there with 0 problems whatsoever. The biggest problem I've had is, and I still have to deal with, other than putting the actual thermostat back into it, these rear shocks are junk. No dampening whatsoever. I got to really think around corners not to make any real sudden changes, because it will, it's just bouncy, but no big deal. I'll just get some aftermarket replacements for that. And the other issue with this bike is I'm having a real time keeping cylinder number 1 in tune with the rest of them. I got it pretty close right now, but I think this linkage spring might be worn out, so this carburetor kind of goes from pulling too hard to not pulling enough to being just right, all in the same ride. So I don't really worry about it. It doesn't really make it harder to ride. It's just me kind of nitpicking a little bit. So yeah, I think that's pretty much everything for this year's projects. What we got going on for the winter, we got a few episodes with the trail trucks. We're going to be doing some metal work on this like we were discussing. We're going to get this thing hopefully registered for the spring, And yeah, that's about it for where we are right now. The electric kayak, we took that on a trip. It's still going strong. The trail bike, the cargo bike we built to go find the lost treasure in Byfield, it just hasn't really, I haven't had time to enjoy those toys, but everything is what it is, and I hope you enjoyed this little update. Questions and comments down below. I may not have a chance to answer them all, but I definitely read everyone. The Facebook group's a good thing to check out. You're going to see things behind the scenes. I did a whole hour-and-a-half live show on the 96 getting that trunk all put together about an hour and a half ago. I think that's kind of why my voice is a little breaking up right now. Talking in front of a camera can be a little stressful on the lungs, if you know what I mean. Well, anyways, guys, I'm talking a little too much, rambling on. Questions, comments, much appreciated. Thanks for watching, and until next time, guys, keep it out of the cabbage.